I am a huge Super Nintendo fan. I have the SNES Mini, and I love it. And I have a bunch of old Super Nintendo consoles sitting around, mostly collecting dust. I hook them up every once in a while. I've got an RCA cable to HDMI converter, which works okay. But when the story started to happen around the new Sega, I forget what it's called, the new Sega device that a company called Analogue was building, and we put it into the news not too long ago, I started to look around and see that this Super NT, which I remember being hyped for, was actually now available. And I looked at the price, and I walked in to look at the amount of Super Nintendo cartridges that I had, and I went, because I play the SNES Mini every once in a while for sure, but there's a lot of games that aren't on those things that I went, I'd like to play those games again, and I'd like to show them to my kid, and I'd like them to be as clean and crisp as they possibly can on my sweet 4K monitor. I've got an LG OLED, and I said, should I do this? And I sort of went back and forth, and I looked at the price, and I think I went through the whole purchasing option and then canceled it a couple of times before I finally said, you know what? It's kind of like the PlayStation 4 Pro Spider-Man thing that I didn't need, but I would have regretted if I didn't get. It was kind of that same kind of thing. So I went for the Analogue Super NT. I wanted to see how the company dealt with shipping and how the company dealt with getting everything to me and how quickly it all happened. And honestly, it happened fairly quickly. I ordered it on the Friday before it arrived on the following Friday. There was a shipping snafu. They used a courier that I'm really disappointed in, and I'm not going to lambast the courier, but let's just say I have a pleasant experience with FedEx most of the time. Now, I've used a lot of couriers in my life, and a lot of things have been couriered to me to review, and I've had a much better experience with FedEx than some of the other competition out there. So you can figure out what it is if you go to the Analogue site anyways and see that. But suffice to say, shipping something from Analogue to Canada is more cumbersome than it should be. But I got it. I spent a little extra money to get this thing here, and I got it, and I hooked it up and was immediately impressed by the pixel precision, the beautifully rendered 16-bit pixels on my crisp display, and to see classic games like Batman Returns and Super Smash TV, which I got immediately hooked back into. That was one of my favorite SNES games, and I played that like crazy. And I also threw in my Super Game Boy and a copy of Donkey Kong, and I tested that out. Incredibly addictive game, one of the most underrated and underappreciated portable games ever made. And so I started to play these games, and I was like, yeah, this is freaking fantastic. And then I had to go away for my Toronto trip, so I kind of packed it away. But what happened to me as I was sort of diving into this is I realized, there's other SNES games that I might want to add to my collection. So I went to the vendor sort of game swap thing at EGLX, and I picked up a couple of new cartridges. We're going to play one of those today in Let's Play and Chat. But I wanted to kind of see how this machine went from game to game to game, and it's pretty damn impressive. Now, clearly, I think the sort of truest to form Super Nintendo experience is to find an old CRT TV and to use the old cables and pick up an original SNES thing and a console and just play with the controllers plugged in. But you know what? It's 2018, and we've got a lot of stuff in our collections. Not just me. I know a lot of you guys have big collections of things, and it's tough to find the space. It's tough to find all of the room in your house for multiple television sets. And I like my 4K setup, and I know that this isn't a 4K thing. It only outputs at 1080p, but it upscales pretty damn beautifully onto my monitor. And so what I did is I went for it. I hooked it up. I played a bunch of games with this. And now what I'm finding is that I will go to this quicker than I would go to the NES Mini or the Super Nintendo Mini right now. And I know that this is my new shiny cat toy that I'm sort of playing with. But it's really fun to have that tactile experience of walking to my shelf and picking up a cartridge and choosing which one I'm going to play and sticking it in and being kind of blown away by it. And I also like to see the delight in my daughter's eyes, who's 6, And she really makes no delineation. You know, she's not like one of these people that's like a graphics snob and says, you know what, it's only Red Dead Redemption 2 or nothing for me. You know, she's not like that. So when she's jumping in and she sees Donkey Kong, you know, in rudimentary colors from a Game Boy cartridge, she's like, wow, that's kind of cool. I like that. Or she sees we're going to play Magical Quest starring Mickey Mouse. She can still be entertained and blown away by the artistry of these classic Super Nintendo games. And I think that this is a system about preservation. It's a system really meant for people that want to have a great HDMI connection and a super clean thing. It has technology, and let me see if I can remember it, because I'm not a technologist, but it's not an emulation like other ones out there. It's called the Field Programmable Gate Array, and it allows these guys to basically get to the chip and to the source of the machinery, the guts of the machinery. So it's not emulating. It's just like a true, you know, improved variation of what the Super Nintendo hardware was originally. So it plays any Super Nintendo games or Super Famicom games. It plays the Super Game Boy stuff. It plays the newer ones. It plays the FX chip ones as well. And all of it is rendered really, really well. There's also copies of Super Turrican Director's Cut and Super Turrican 2 on here, which I want to check out a little bit and Let's Play and chat as well. And all of it is superb. It's just a superb, indulgent experience, which I'm really having a good time with. And the other thing that I did to complete the collection of the Super NT that I got is, and this is sort of suggested on the Analogue website, is to go and pick up one of the 8-bit DOE controllers. Now, I've got a few of these things. I've got the sort of the dual stick ones. I've used them on phones. I've used them on computers. I know that you can hook some of these things up to the Switch as well and play through the Bluetooth connection there. You can play some of the classic games or whatever using classic feeling controllers. I went with the Super Famicom look for my Super NT because I never had that console. I always liked the sort of more colorful look of it. Wasn't crazy about the gray and purple sort of highlights of the old original Super Nintendo. I think that could have been a better looking console. I guess they were still trying to have, you know, pretend and fool everybody that the Nintendo machines were computers or something like that. But I like the toy-like look and the aesthetics of the Super Famicom. So that's kind of the style that I went. Hooking up the 8-bit DOE and connecting this thing wirelessly, I haven't noticed any lags or any sort of hesitation on my jumps or anything like that. And remember, these pixel games were super precise. You know, you had to make those jumps perfectly. So it's been really fun to kind of retrain myself to play games like that, retrain myself to play games just fully digitally like this. And I've found that slapping in the cartridges and playing these games is kind of like a palate cleanser between some of these massive open world experiences that I've been playing, like Red Dead Redemption 2 and Assassin's Creed Odyssey. It's a weird time to be playing 16-bit stuff because there's so many things going on. I'm going to turn this off right now and I can show you that you can put the cartridges in right there and they kind of snap right in like that, just good old days like that. But it's been a nice kind of juxtaposition with all of this modern tech and all of these massive games and some of the Battle Royale type murmurs and controversies and some of the microtransaction sort of anger and stuff that sort of filters out all over the place. To play these classic games where everything came on a cartridge is really fun. So I love this thing. I know it's not for everybody. I know you get 20 great games on this Super Nintendo Classic. I know lots of people emulate and lots of people have ROMs everywhere. I've got the Retron 5 and I was always impressed with it. You could throw in a bunch of old cartridges into that one too. But this just feels like another level. It's got some heft to it. It feels stable. It feels sturdy. And right now, for my money, it is the very best way that you can play Super Nintendo games. I think this is awesome. I'm going to give the Analogue Super NT a 9 out of 10